Hello there, all fellow Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts fans. I don't know if you're anything like me, but when I saw the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movie, I was immediately flown back to that time when the Harry Potter series was unfinished and all of us fans got to play the guessing game of what's going to happen in the next books. To me, this was a special and cherished time, and I keep having the same excited feeling even today when thinking about the new movies to come. I've listened to the Speak Beastie podcast, read the Harry Potter Professor's blog, and followed YouTubers such as Seamus Gorman, HB Folklore, and Super Carlin Brothers, to name a few, just to find out if someone's gathered any new information or theories. If you're anything like me, I highly suggest you go check out them as well. I will add the links to the description box below. However, I've had the most fun watching SP Paul's videos, which I think are amazingly well researched and intelligent. Do check her channel out. Well, after flooding her Twitter inbox with multiple questions and my own theories, as well as collaborating on some of her videos, she kindly suggested I might want to set up my own channel. So here I am. I hope you bear with me. Without further ado, I will get on to my first theory. Now, as I'm sure many of you have noticed, the first film, and especially its merchandise, is covered with symbols such as these. These symbols appear, for example, in the key scene where Newt is interrogated inside the pentagram room. If you want to hear more about these symbols, I highly suggest that you watch one of SP Paul's videos on the subject. But for now, let me cut straight to the chase. To me, these symbols look very, very similar to runes, the letters used by many Germanic languages in Europe before converting to the Latin alphabet system we now use. We also know from the Harry Potter books that the study of ancient runes is part of the curriculum of Hogwarts, making runes part of canon for the whole Harry Potter universe. Runes were not explored much in the original series, but maybe in Fantastic Beasts we will see more of them. The runic system is familiar to most people because it was the writing system of early European populations, such as the Vikings. In fact, I think most people associate runes particularly with the Vikings. Why is this important then? Well, we know that Grindelwald was educated in Durmstrang before he was expelled. Rowling has also stated in interviews that while Durmstrang is unplottable, she believes it is situated in northern Scandinavia, the very north of Sweden or Norway. While I know that runestones can be found even in the UK and that Vikings were not the sole users of these symbols, I do think that for the general audience the most likely associations for runes are the Nordic sagas and Vikings. I believe that some of the magic that Grindelwald is able to do is likely tied to the curriculum of the school, and that the school's curriculum is tied to its location. Why is Durmstrang's location important? Well, before the movies arrived in theaters, Pottermore published several articles on wizarding schools across the world. To me, it seemed like most of the schools had specialities in magic that had to do with the ancient rituals of the indigenous populations of each continent. For example, the largest African schools, Wagados, graduates are especially well versed in astronomy, alchemy, and self-transfiguration, whereas the Brazilian schools, Castelo Bruxo, students are advanced in herbology and magicology. For Europe, the indigenous people can be roughly divided into two main groups. The Basques, who, by the way, inhabit the area around the Pyrenees, where Beaubatons is thought to be situated in, and the Nordic Sami people, who live in the north of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia. Many have speculated about the exact location of Durmstrang, but I guess it is fairly safe to say that it is positioned somewhere where the Sami people live, e.g. Lapland of Norway or Sweden. Given that Rowling has already taken us to the United States and has promised a visit to Paris in the next film, I have a feeling we might see or at least hear from some of the other visiting schools in the world. We might not extensively visit Durmstrang, but I think that the movies aim to give us a little bit of a world tour, considering the time period and the imminent Second World War. When I heard that the new film would feature two Icelandic actors, my immediate thought was similar to the one Jacob has in the bank when meeting Newt and hearing that Newt too will be applying for a loan to open a bakery. Well, what are the odds of that? Ingvar Egger Sigurðsson has been cast to play Grimson, and Olafur Darri Olafsson, who was born in the USA but returned to Iceland, will play Skender. My immediate thoughts were that these new characters must be Durmstrang alumni and that maybe Durmstrang is based in Iceland after all. However, after thinking about it some more, I doubt that we will find Durmstrang in Iceland, but the notion that two actors from a country with a population of a little over 300,000 people were picked is certainly curious. To me, it seems unlikely that these two actors chose an open audition for a blockbuster movie with little chance of getting roles, instead of working in their native countries for a market with much less competition and risk. Instead, I think it's far more likely that these actors were scouted for in some Nordic country, and in this case it happened to be Iceland. The citizens of all Nordic countries have to learn at least one Nordic language at school, and Icelanders often know at least Danish and possibly other Nordic languages such as Norwegian as well. So, faking a couple of phrases of Swedish, for example, wouldn't be a problem, especially as Nordic languages are very similar to each other. If these two new characters, Skender and Grimson, are indeed from somewhere in Scandinavia, my bet would be that they are also Durmstrang alumni, and possibly that they may have gone to school with Grindelwald. To go back to the part about each magical school being specialized in some forms of magic of the indigenous people living in the area, I will discuss a little bit what I think would be the specialities of Durmstrang and how its curriculum might have influenced Grindelwald. As the Nordic Sami people have historically been greatly oppressed, and even to this day the situation is far from ideal, I will not pretend that I am an expert on their culture. However, being a citizen of one of the Nordic countries, I am somewhat familiar with their history. We know that shamanistic rituals were common, and that rune-like symbols were used, especially in ceremonic Sami drums, to predict future, to cure illnesses, and things like that. Shamans would go into a trance where they would sing and bang on a drum, and eventually their soul would leave their body to heal someone or bring knowledge. All in all, it can be said that the ancient rituals of this indigenous population were likely intermixed with Viking pagan rituals. Given that Rowling has previously situated magical schools in areas that are populated with indigenous minorities, and that these schools seem to have similar traditions of magic to those of the indigenous tribes in the areas, I do think that we might learn something about Durmstrang by studying the Sami people's shamanism, or even going back to the times of the Vikings. What most interests me in terms of what kind of magic Durmstrang might have in its curriculum is runic magic. I do believe that if the runes we saw in the movie serve a purpose, they may hint at Durmstrang's specialities as a school, and perhaps even why Grindelwald went hunting for the Hallows. After all, the Hallow symbol looks quite a bit like a rune as well, and carving it on a wall in Durmstrang certainly seemed to have some kind of an effect. We know that historically, besides being an ordinary writing system, some runes also served purposes of magic. For example, victory runes were carved into swords for good luck. Therefore, the runes could be used as a sort of a spell by writing them on an object. The National Museum of Denmark has posted on their website a good article about runic magic, which I encourage anyone interested in the topic to check out. I will read aloud 3 excerpts that I think offer the most valuable information about runic magic and talk a little bit about how they might refer to Durmstrang. Number 1. Runes had magical powers. They could predict the future, counteract harmful forces, provide various qualities, or they could be used in incantations, curses, and magic spells. Well, this obviously sounds a lot like the magic we are familiar with in the Harry Potter universe, except that these are done without wands. Number 2. Runes could also be used in rune casting, for instance to predict the future or to obtain an answer from the oracle. This part is particularly interesting because we know the Grindelwald is a seer. Could divination feature in the curriculum of Durmstrang? Is it a teachable skill, or rather something one is born with? This was largely debated in the Harry Potter books, but perhaps we will hear more about seers now that we have one as an important character. Number 3. Runic magic could be dangerous if the user was not knowledgeable about its secrets. I wonder if this could be behind the rumors of Durmstrang being a sort of dark art school. In Pottermore, it says that Durmstrang once had the darkest reputations of all 11 visiting schools, though this was never entirely merited. Maybe runic magic is considered dark magic by some wizards. It is so far not very clear why the school has such a bad reputation, except for the fact that it was run by a former Death Eater and that its alumni included Grindelwald. Well, to me, however, this would not be a good enough explanation, as Hogwarts also educated Voldemort and was ruled by Death Eaters at one point. I really hope we will learn more about Durmstrang in the upcoming movies. What do you think? Will the runes feature more in the upcoming films? And will they be in any way related to Grindelwald, Durmstrang, or Scandinavia? If we do learn more about runes, one thing I would be really curious about is whether Rowling has come up with her own runic system. As there are multiple runic systems, I am uncertain whether Rowling has used any actual one, but rather mix up several systems and maybe come up with some of her own runes. We know, for example, that the numbers of the Wizarding runic system are based on magical beasts. I think this would be incredibly cool. It reminds me kind of what Tolkien did when creating the Elvish language of Middle-earth. Please give me your thoughts on this theory and tell me if you had any new ideas or information when watching this video. I would love to discuss more with fellow fans. If you have suggestions for good sources for more theories, I would also really like it if you shared them with me. Thanks for watching.